Why, hello there, and welcome to episode 3 of the Wrap Up Podcast, the greatest place on the internet for discourse about bookish stuff. Hello, Billy. I am joined today by Billy Bonsai.
Thank you for having me,
Billy.
Luke. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And today we're going to talk about, what are we talking about? Go on, you tell them. Actually, no. Before you tell them, give us an elevator pitch for your channel.
So my channel is Billy Bonsai. It's basically just me talking about books. I tend to gravitate towards more existential fiction, but I do enjoy fantasy fiction as well. So there's going to be a mix on my channel of those things. So philosophy, horror, and fantasy.
And actually, even with the fantasy, I think your takes on fantasy do sort of dip more towards the themes and the stuff that, like the psychological stuff that you find interesting anyway. So
yeah, when I read a book, that tends to be what I gravitate towards is the themes, the I guess the meanings behind some things without sounding pretentious. I do like obviously world building, plot, and all those things that you like in a fantasy, but most of my enjoyment comes from thinking about it and extracting it, and I guess that reflects in my videos somewhat.
100%. Isn't it weird how different reviewers gravitate towards different things?
That's the thing. I've tend to watch other channels. Like, what I like about your channel is it's from the writing perspective.
I really focus on language, I think, because that's my favourite part of writing.
I tend to gravitate towards more educationally sort of booktube channels. Like, I don't know why. And a few of them again are sort of extracting the meanings and stuff. I like to be thoughtful about it, but I'm getting more and more interested in the writing side of things as well.
Okay. I mean, that's why I like watching your channel, because I do like the sort of the way you go about it. Like, even with Stormlight, you take different things from it. Same with Michelle, the same with Michael Nip, the same with a lot of the booktubers that I watch. They all seem to take different things from a book, and I think that's really interesting. Today, we are going to be talking about, to simply put it, why do we read? What is the purpose of reading, essentially? And the reason I'm talking to Billy about it is because we definitely get different things from books, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'll tell you why I read, and then you can say why you read, because I think I know why you read, because we've briefly spoke about this before. But I do read to escape. I do read to... I think I'm a bit emotionally unintelligent.
What do you mean by that?
It's part of my personality type. But if you guys haven't seen episode 2 of Wrap Up, me and Michelle talk about personality types and MBTI. So if that interests you, go and watch that. But basically, my personality type, ENTP, means that I sort of think about things in a logical way, sort of. But I'm very like emotionally unaware. At least I think. I've probably made that's probably a terrible summary, and Michelle's probably gonna like punch me for saying that.
I get what you mean. It's the sort of disconnect maybe with empathy, more logic.
Yeah, and that's why I read. I read to empathise with characters. I read to feel emotions. I read to experience experiences. Whereas other people, like I think you do, you read to learn, right?
Yeah, I read to learn, but I also enjoy learning about the human experience, if that doesn't sound too weird. It's more like, obviously,
doesn't sound weird.
I think an objective thing with reading, why a lot of people read, especially fiction, is it helps with empathy and empathizing with characters, increases your overall ability to empathize in a way. But I'm just interested also in the human experience as individuals. I'm very individual thinker.
Individualistic.
That's the one.
Is that the word you was looking for?
I'm very individualistic, and it just interests me, and that's why I've been enjoying BookTube as well, because everyone's got their own different takes and their own way of digesting books, and I find that very interesting.
Especially when it's the same books. That's what I find weird.
Yeah, it's
completely different takes.
Interesting to me that someone can read a character from a book and have a completely different viewpoint and opinion on said character from someone else.
Well, it's like some people call Kaladin mopey, and that really pisses me off, because I think it's a very like blatant display of clinical depression. So I kind of get a bit offended when people are like, "Oh, Kaladin's so mopey." It's like, screw you.
Yeah, and I viewed Kaladin. I've not spoke about Kaladin much on my channel yet. I do plan on doing a video on it, but I actually view
do a deep
Kaladin
dive.
from an existential lens of how he's a great representation of that philosophy of existentialism and
Just
and
he
mental
is
health
just so
as well.
depressed. Yeah, he's just. I mean, I'm pretty sure Brandon Sanderson has come out and said like, yeah, Kaladin has depression.
Yeah, he has like the clear signs of it, I think, but
Mm.
it is it's actually quite genius how Sanderson's wrote it so well. Like the way he deals with it, I feel is like the way you should deal with it.
Makes him still a hero character. That's what's so interesting about it. I mean, there are times where it is a bit unsubtle and a bit woe is me, but at the same time, though, that is realistic. I've said in a couple of videos before that with Kaladin, the way he snaps at people, the way he pushes people away, when you have that mindset, that is what you do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you tend to isolate yourself a little more and retreat from people when you're like that, especially mentally as well, because you don't feel like people understand what you're thinking and feeling. But what I particularly like about Kaladin is, and what Sanderson's great at doing is showing and not telling, like it's in his actions and what he does. But
And that's why I love reading his character. Because
he's fantastic.
I feel like, oh, I'm not alone, you know? I mean, obviously, like, I'm not... I mean, they don't know this, but I'm not actually a flying superhero. But I can really vibe with a lot of the mental problems that he goes through. And that is why I read fiction, to not only empathise, but also relate.
I feel like that is something that is sort of true to the human experience. And this is why so many people do relate to Kaladin, is because it is a genuine I think it is just a genuine, without sounding too dark, I think it is just a genuine
Sound dark, mate, don't worry about it.
well, it's just a general sort of part of life. I feel for most people is the suffering aspect of it. This is where the existentialism argument comes in from me, is it's even though life is a struggle,
Life is misery.
It's not even the misery part, it's suffering is what brings us meaning. It's working through it, which Kaladin does really well. I do aim to do
some people do not
a fleshed out video on that. But
my girlfriend gets well mad at me, right? Because I do say things like that all the time. I definitely think I'm more like of an existentialist as well. Well, I used to be a bit nihilistic, and I mean, I don't know if anyone's seen my existential book tag thing where I was just taking the mick, but there was a passage in there that I actually wrote that. Like, I had to write it before I did it, and at the time of writing it, I sort of meant it all, and it was like, life is meaningless, we don't ask to be born, and it was supposed to be extra and a joke, but it's true. Like,
yeah, I mean, I recently spoke about this a little bit in the hindsight book tag that I did with my past reading, how dystopian fiction got me into a more nihilistic viewpoint, and this also meshes in with our sort of main topic, which we've diverted a little bit from, but
we're just having a chat. We can weave towards it.
It's how reading can shape your worldview like that, especially with how you digest books. So when I was reading books like 1984, I was feeling a lot more afraid of the world in a sense. Like that book, if you've not, like, that book opened, as cliche as it like opened my eyes, like it blew my mind
about how bad things can get.
Started viewing things completely differently. It was crazy, but it made me quite nihilistic at the time, I would say. But I think, like, I've become less nihilistic, and I tend to gravitate more towards the existential side of things now in terms of philosophy, because I've read philosophy for a few years now, and I've read Stoicism books and loads of non-fiction, that sort of thing, but I feel like recently existentialism is the one that I'm like really gravitating towards.
If you guys want some good, is it fair to say your content is existentialist? Is that fair to say?
A few of, I guess, in the way I digest books in terms of like meaning extraction and stuff. Maybe the past few books that I've definitely reviewed have been, I would say, existential, like Fight Club and Notes from Underground.
Yeah.
They definitely have those sorts of themes in there.
So people used to like read a lot, and even though maybe it's not so obvious in our little nook of the internet because we're on BookTube and everyone on BookTube reads books, but reading is a dying habit, and I think part of that is because people have just the lowest of attention spans ever, and I'm guilty of this because I'm a product of modern society. Sometimes I struggle to concentrate on a book. Sometimes I struggle to just sit down, relax, and read, and that is a huge problem. And I just don't know. Like, I feel like people just don't read anymore.
I definitely have similar problems. Like the hardest thing to put away is the phone. That's the biggest distraction, I think. But especially for us that want to talk to other booktubers and stay on top of things like that, it is quite hard to stay away from that. And
maybe BookTube is a way of forcing people.
I feel like it's made me want to read more, for sure.
Same.
But going back to that original point that you said, like our corner of the internet, like I don't have obviously a number for this, but
just
I would
make
say
up a
roughly
statistic. Everyone else does it.
I'd say roughly like 80% of the channels that I've gone on, when you look at like their first videos or something, it's mostly, and it's true for me as well. I got into this because none of my friends read, and I wanted to talk about reading, and I feel this is what's great about BookTube. But it is, I don't know if it's increasing year by year, the amount people read, but it's definitely hard for people to read because of the amount of distractions that we get.
Maybe it's not increasing. Maybe we're just seeing more because we're noticing it more because we've joined this community.
Yeah, possibly.
Because you guys are the only people I know that read. None of the people in my real life, like, because I'm a writer, I go to my mates. Oh, will you read my book? And they're like, And it's just like it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
my mum reads my uni work. That's about it.
I'm having a right pain trying to get like close friends to read. When they'll talk to me about something, and I'll be like, "Oh, I know a book that's like this. Maybe this will help you out because it's got those sorts of themes and stuff in it." And they're just like, "Oh, reading. Okay.
Ain't you got a YouTube video?" That is weird because it's like joining BookTube. Not only does it make us want to read more, and it's forced us to read more because we want to be relevant in a community where we talk about the books we want. It really is holding us accountable because I want to catch up. I want to be able to be involved in the same conversations, which is strange because that means BookTube and YouTube in and of itself have created a socialized version of reading, because before people just read and because that's the entertainment that they had. But now it's like we've had to create an entire BookTube is like a different type of social media that just involves reading.
Yeah, it is. It's
weird. Like what Instagram's done to photography.
Yeah, it's kind of like going on an old school forum, but just a modern version of it, where obviously there's a lot of discussion in like Discords and comment sections and all that sort of stuff. But I find it encouraging. I don't think it's like a pressure to read the books, like, oh, this person's reading that book.
Some people definitely feel that pressure, but
yeah, I would say so. For me personally, again, because I just read kind of what interests me and what I like to read. Because I read not for escapism most of the time.
Yeah,
I read to digest the actual meanings and all that sort of stuff. But that's why I don't sort of feel that pressure. I don't feel like I need to be caught up with everything.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel FOMO that I'm not able to join in the conversation with regards to like Red Rising, First Law. I haven't read Rhythm of War yet, so everyone else is ahead of me in the Cosmere. And even though like saying ahead of me is like it's just a hobby, you're just reading, just read. But I can't help but feel that sometimes when all the people that are in the same community as me have read things that I haven't.
Yeah, well, it's wanting to be part of the discussion as well and just be included in it, I guess. Like
I want to be validated.
Red Rising for me was on my radar, just browsing bookshops and stuff, but I'm hearing about it all the time now. So I still have that mindset, like, maybe I should try it out.
It's because they're all doing live streams and stuff. That's what it is. It's like, oh, I want to be a part of this.
My main focus is always to just read what I like to read. Because that's one of the things about my channel that's been complimented to me is like, oh, you're reading different books to like everyone else. And I think that's quite nice. But that's just
that's what I like.
What I'm interested in. But coming back to the original purpose of reading is, you said you read for escapism. The reason I read more specifically is I want to learn more about myself and my psychology. I feel when you're reading a book, and let's say, I get this is just true for most people. It's not like news or anything, but when Kaladin does, there's a moment in Way of Kings. It's earlier on, but slight spoiler, I guess, where he is in the camp and he just stands up and goes outside and starts working out by himself. And that's how he encourages the others to start doing it. At first, they hate him for it, but he does it because it feels right to him. That, when I read that, I was, somewhat woken up in my brain and was like, that's, what's he doing there? And that's what I like to extract. It's like, why is that important to me?
He's not like trying to pep them up. He's just showing them what's possible.
Yeah, it's like, I can do it. You can do it. So
I never thought. See, this is what I mean. I'd never thought about it like that before. This is why it's like having unique and different takes on books and having the conversation is so important, because I'd never thought about that like before. You've actually just like blown my mind. That's really cool.
But that's why Kaladin was such a great character to me.
Yeah, I'm inspired, mate.
When you said earlier on in this conversation that people find him mopey, I've not heard any opinions like that, so maybe I should listen to them.
I've heard a few.
Get in the comments, keyboard warrior style. But actually,
I think I've just heard that from people that don't relate, I guess.
There's obviously the broader terms of why people find Kaladin relatable, but let's not get too much into Kaladin again.
I mean, we've decided to center it around Kaladin. I mean, that's not necessarily a problem, but okay, right. So I've seen some comments before. I actually saw a comment on Michelle's channel before, where people have been criticized for like reading fiction, and they're told, oh, you should read non-fiction because it's better for you and you're gonna get more from it. And I got really annoyed by a comment that someone left on one of Michelle's book reviews, because he was saying, why are you wasting your time reading fiction? Why don't you like read something that's... Imagine if you invested that amount of time into something more productive. And I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. Yeah, you said earlier about how you want to learn about your own psychology. I don't want to learn about my own psychology. That's terrifying. I don't want to know how this messed up brain works. I want that information to be completely ignorant to me.
I guess that's where some of the existentialism comes in a little bit, because it is terrifying and it is tough. But I don't know.
Real life sucks, mate. Real life sucks. I want to be in a fantasy world. That's where I want to live.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I do like escaping to. I think books like Stormlight are somewhat escapism for me, but I think they're just so... That series is just so well written, it kind of does both of those things for me. What
do you think about people saying that fiction is a waste of time and that people should be reading non-fiction because you could actually learn, like, legitimately, like, it's meant for learning?
To be sort of blunt about it, I think they're completely wrong. Like, I used to read, throughout education, I used to read mostly non-fiction. I used to read fantasy a lot in the past when I was young. I went to non-fiction mostly during education. I don't know why, to be fair, but it's just what I sort of read more. And I feel like in a sort of modern, sort of, I guess, maybe even Western society where, a lot of it is work and getting out there and improving yourself or whatever. Non-fiction gives you the sort of guidelines to doing that. It can give you steps. It'll say, like, this is how people work psychologically, step 1, 2, and 3, if that makes sense. Fiction doesn't really do that. It interweaves it into plots and stories, and
you have to interpret it.
Yeah, it's all down to interpretation. So I understand why people say it if they're sort of maybe more psychologically conscientious, where they're more organized and they just want...
They want to know.
A, B,
they want
C.
to exactly extract what they want to extract from it. They don't want to have to wonder and speculate about what to take from the text. They want it to just say, A, you got to do this. B, you got to do this. C, this is the truth, as opposed to, oh, I wonder if maybe this guy feels this way because of this, essentially.
Yeah, but I just feel like that sort of argument isn't even well thought out, because it's music and paintings and books wouldn't exist if we didn't I mean, look at religion.
Well, maybe they're saying that they don't want those things to exist.
But
maybe those things are a waste of time.
I guess the
Hot
world
take.
the world would be a sadder place without it, because there is purpose in it. I think there is certainly.
Now we're getting deep. What's the purpose? What's the purpose in art?
The purpose in art. This is something that I haven't pondered on too deeply. So we'll be figuring out this as we go along.
As we speak. So it's just going to be
the audience can join
tangent,
us
then.
in us figuring it out. But
what is the purpose in Mona Lisa?
But again, on a psychological level, it's when you look at something like that, or you listen to a piece of music, or whatever, or when you read a book. You're a writer, right? When you read something, and a sentence is structured in a certain way, and it wakes up your brain, and you're like, why do I like that? Like, why does your brain like it? It's like, maybe we don't really need to know why. We just need to know that it does. And listen to that.
I want to feel it. Like, okay, for me, when I write, the whole purpose, I want to. This probably does sound pretentious, but I want to write to create emotions. I want to manipulate the reader's emotions. I want them to feel things, and I want to have that power and go, I'm going to make you cry now by writing this paragraph. That's what I want, because I've listened to music. I've looked at a piece of art. I've read a passage in a book, and it's resonated. And I couldn't even pinpoint why, but it's like, wow. Like, I listened to the Outlander score, like the first season's like soundtrack, before I ever watched it. And as soon as I listened to that music, I'm like, I want to be in Scotland. I want to be standing on a mountain. I want wind in my hair. Why do I want that? You know, like, it's, what am I doing up there? Just standing there like, wow, this is nice. But it resonates so hard.
Yeah.
I don't even know why. I don't even know how to pinpoint that.
Intrinsically rewarding. It's
But
like,
why?
Okay, to get deep a little bit here, right? We were watching Fight Club the other day, right?
Yes.
Do you know the scene where they're in the car and he's playing chicken and he's like, you're going to die, and basically they might die in the car. And he's like, what did you want to do? He's like, I want to build a house, right? When we were watching that scene, my brain thought, I want to write a book. But why? So it's like, it's listening to that and being aware of that sort of stuff. I don't know why.
So did that convince you that that's something that you actually want to do, that you didn't even realize that you actually really wanted to do before?
I've been feeling like I wanted to write a book for a while now. I'm just terrible at finishing things.
Yeah,
and
same.
Turning off my inner critic. It's just one of those battles that I hopefully will, get past one day and finish something. But this is why I love BookTube and joining Discords.
Start with short stories.
I've been advised that I actually think I will. I started a short story the other day, not finished it though.
It's just more digestible, isn't it?
Yeah, again, it's like I don't know psychologically why we're inclined to do those things, but all I need to know is that, if it's there and we listen to it, and you listen to your conscious, then that's what's important. And that's why I like reading, because it also, for me, it facilitates those ideas, like the important ones, I guess. I don't get that really from anything else. I
know exactly what you mean. And it's like, I guess as well, I am a different reader to someone that just reads for fun. So I can't actually relate with people that just read for fun, because I suppose I am actually learning from it, because I'm also taking influences for my own writing. So like you were saying, like, you don't know why you pulled that from that, and you didn't necessarily know that that's exactly, like, yes. Oh, I just hit myself in the headphones. that yes, that's exactly what you want to do. And then you watch something, or you consume a piece of media or a piece of art, and it convinces you of something from your subconscious. And it's like, when I was reading The First Law, I was reading it and I was loving it, and my brain went, I want to write more comedy, like more black comedy in my work. I didn't know that I wanted to write black comedy, but when I read that and it influenced me, I was like, I want to do this because I love this. So that's a learning experience in and of itself. It's learning something that I didn't know I wanted to do, but now I really want to do that, basically.
Yeah, and it's listening to those things and thinking on them is what I enjoy in reading. So, and to sort of extend on that as well, it facilitated that idea, right? Like, everyone's learning. Again, purpose of reading, to go back, is we're learning from it even if we don't know about it. And it's the extension of empathy thing as well. It's like, that's the weird thing about reading to me, is like, you just pick up things, you just learn as you go. It's like practice in a way. And this, I mean, I guess to link it into writing as well, this is why they say like all writers should read, as much as they can, because you pick things up. What I enjoy doing, I guess, is noticing those as they're happening and trying figuring it out. I don't know if that's healthy or overthinking, but it's just what I enjoy. And I think that's intrinsically for me why I find reading meaningful.
I don't know. I can't read things unless I care about the characters. So it's definitely an empathy thing for me. If the characters aren't jumping off the page and I'm not really immersed in their head, I have a really tough time getting into that book.
Yeah, I think that's like a human thing though, because I'm also really interested in the characters.
Well, I really struggle with non-fiction.
You really struggle with non-fiction?
I've read 12 Rules for Life, Sapiens, The Art of Thinking Clearly, and I've read a couple of like history things and a couple of writing books, but they were a bit of a slog for me because there's no real. I mean, 12 Rules for Life was quite an easier read because Jordan Peterson sort of writes it with like there's sort of a narrative there. He has actually got like a narrative voice because a lot of it's anecdotal.
Yeah, I was going to talk about this a little bit. I might as well go into it now. Actually, is like in terms of like the existentialism thing.
Go on, son, dive right in.
I think Jordan Peterson was one of the ones that introduced me to those ideas. I started reading Nietzsche because of Jordan Peterson and stuff. 12 Rules for Life I read when it first came out a few years ago. I enjoy nonfiction because again, it's about the learning, extracting the ideas, and I do enjoy, as long as I'm interested in the topic, I do enjoy nonfiction because I feel like also I'm not the most organized myself. I think nonfiction helps you put things in perspective and organize.
Yeah.
But
The Art of Thinking Clearly was a really helpful book, and it's I don't know if you've read that. There's only
not read that one, no.
Each little section is quite a short chapter, so and it goes through different fallacies and psychological ideas and things that people do in their life that actually hinder them. And I haven't applied all of it, so it didn't completely work, but it's an interesting read.
Yeah, I don't think anyone ever applies like 100% of nonfiction. It is, I don't know, it's one of those genres that people, from what I've seen online and the people that talk about nonfiction on YouTube, there is that sort of idea that it changes their life and all that, but there's only very few nonfiction books that have actually like genuinely helped like make genuine improvement. I guess the reason that I read fiction is because I feel like I'm figuring out that for myself in a way.
No one's telling you something.
Yeah.
And also you're resonating with people in the story as opposed to like someone just saying, you should be more like this, you should do this. You're actually feeling the things that you want to figure out. Do you get what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. That's the interesting thing about characters in books to me as well, is how writers can write so many different characters, even though it's all coming from one mind. It's like that's one thing that would be interesting for me if I was to write myself, like how many minds could I jump into and actually
to explore it.
Yeah, and tell a different perspective. And that's the interesting thing of human experience, I think. Yeah.
I really love coming up with characters that are really different to me. I mean, obviously, in my writing, I definitely weave a few like argumentative ENTPs in there. I can't help it because it's who I am. But it's funny because I go to uni, I study creative writing, and we have a workshop. And a lot of us so they're young writers, inexperienced writers. Some of them are mature students, but they aren't necessarily like they've only just started writing and stuff. And some of the stuff that these people submit in the workshops, when I'm reading it, I'm like, well, this is just about you. You know, like there's one girl in my class, I'm not going to name her, but she's quite angsty, you know, like, oh, I shouldn't have to follow structure and rules. Oh, I'm so edgy and cool, right? And then you read her work, and her work is good, and her prose is really amazing. But when every single thing that she's ever submitted has been about an edgy, angsty, girl that's around the same age as her. And it's like, but that's not what writing is about, right? It's not. If you're writing fiction, it's not supposed to be biographical. You're exploring different people, different ideas, different experiences. That's why I want to do it anyway. I don't know about other people.
I mean, I guess I've not had a lot of writing experience. Like anything I've done has not been finished, and it's just been for hobby,
Yeah.
But I've always found that I've done similar with my writing, but I think it's just a practice thing of like, you're probably mostly going to talk about yourself at first until you start to learn to branch out and do that stuff. I find that interesting. Like, I like jumping into the minds of fictional characters in a way.
I mean, I really want to write some drastically different characters to me. I mean, I have done. It's like we've there's been a lot of debate recently. I mean, we've already spoke about it I've already spoke about it on Wrap Up with the whole authorial intent, and it's like the reason it's a weird conversation to me is because the whole point of writing it to me is jumping in a different brain. So how could an author be held accountable for writing a complete bastard, like someone completely evil? Or I mean, one of the most popular types of fiction is like serial killers and psychos. My girlfriend, like one of her favorite books. Well, she's got two favorite books. One of them is from the point of view of a guy that helps his wife murder people, right? And like brutally, like she peels off their fingernails, probably like gross stuff, And then another one of her favorite books is like a crime love story sort of thing, where the author has done this really sick thing where she's crafted this beautiful love story to try and make you really want them to be together, but they're brother and sister. So she's deliberately made you want to root for them when you know it's wrong.
That's what I find interesting is that sort of stuff.
I'll find
as
you
well.
the title of that.
Yeah, because I'd be interested in reading that, because my first example of something that was done like that was really good is reading Fyodor Dostoevsky and reading Crime and Punishment, because the main character in that is... have you read Crime and Punishment?
No, I want to, but once again, I'm intimidated by it.
Yeah, so
Christy's been bugging me to read it.
Avoiding like major spoilers, because this happens at the sort of beginning of the book. It's the sort of setup for it, but like the main character is this guy who has like every reason to hate this landlord, but he has a landlord. She basically takes money from everyone. She keeps it in a chest, like she hoards it for herself, and he's like starving, and he plans a murder, and he murders her basically, and he has like every reason to do it, and you kind of like it's weird to be like, well, it happens at the start, like the book's about the sort of mental fall off from it, and that's what's so genius about
this.
Dostoevsky.
Actually makes me feel better. This makes me feel better about going into this, because I am so intimidated by Crime and Punishment that's actually enticed me to want to read it more than just knowing about it being like this psychological crime thing.
It is honestly, it's a book that blew my mind. I didn't think I'd like it when I read it. I was like, we'll see. I've not read much classical. I read it a couple of years ago, and it's one of those books that I still don't feel like I fully understand. But like, to go back to what I was originally saying, it's like the fact that you can sort of relate to someone that does something so bad, but then it's also giving you an alternate perspective afterwards of saying like, yeah, you could be like this person, but here's the fall off from it. And that's what's so genius about Dostoevsky is he makes you believe, and it's like he sets up the strongest argument against something, and then he's trying to beat that argument, and that sounds like a strange thing to say, but
no, that's really interested me in it way more than before. Yeah. That's a good way to do it. It's like he's got a hypothesis. He's deliberately saying, right, I mean, this is something that I really don't agree with. Now I'm going to try and agree with it.
Yeah,
sort of
that
thing.
basically
that's interesting.
How Dostoevsky seems to write. I've only read a couple of his novels. I've got to go through the other ones, but that's what I found interesting about his writing, especially. That's what's, I think, why it resonates with
Once
so
again,
many people.
you've sold me on it, mate. So you're good at selling me on it by having these takes that I've never really heard before. But like, I'm never going to be as good as Dostoevsky. I'm never going to even attempt to say that I am. But I do try to do this sort of thing with how I'm writing. Like in the novel that I've been writing for the last year, there's an antagonistic character in my novel. He's antagonistic to the other characters, and he's I'm trying to make him really charismatic. I'm trying to make him really likable, and then once that happens, I want him to do abhorrent things. I want him to be just this really despicable character while still being likable and charismatic, because to me, that's just a fun exploration. I like. There's a book. Do you know Shadiversity, the YouTuber? He talks about like medieval stuff. So he brought out Shadow of the Conqueror, and I mean, I have a lot of problems with that book. I don't think it's amazingly well written, but the concept alone is incredible. The main character is very Stalin-esque. He was a dictator. He's raped. He's murdered children. Absolute despicable person, and he's your protagonist.
And really? That's interesting.
It's interesting because he's probably the most irredeemable character I've ever read, and I sort of didn't hate him 100% of the time. You know,
they're the characters that I tend to like in books. The ones that really challenge my thinking of like, I shouldn't like this person or I shouldn't agree. Like that's just good character work in it.
I really like the First Law, and I mean, if any of those characters were in like Stormlight or Mistborn, they wouldn't be likable characters. I don't know what it is about the First Law that just makes these characters really likable.
Yeah, a lot of those characters are like, for me, I love to hate them, that sort of thing.
Okay, I just love them.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, you've not finished First Law yet, have you? You're on the third one.
I've done the first third of the third book.
I'll be interested to see what you think of Giselle.
I like him at the moment.
I liked him for a while, but that's what I mean. Like,
no spoilers. He's gonna do something
without getting into spoilers.
Bad,
It's not even necessarily that. It's again, I don't want to spoil it, but it's just his overall behavior and who he is. I really hated him.
I hated him in the first one, and then I sort of grew to like him in the second one. So I don't know. Maybe he hasn't done anything else that's going to completely change my mind. We'll see.
He does have some redeeming moments in the second one.
To bring this back to like another purpose of reading, essentially, is I saw this point earlier, and I think it's interesting. This article said reading helps with communication because by reading, one increases their vocabulary, meaning they're able to communicate ideas better. And I've noticed that. I don't know if you've noticed that, but since getting back into reading, because I sort of stopped when I started secondary school, and I didn't pick it up again until I was like 18 or something. And I'm from Essex. I'm working class. My vocabulary was pretty embarrassing throughout most of school, and I didn't know any words. And now I have conversations with my parents, who are also Essex, working class, and they don't know what I'm saying half the time because I come out with words that they've never heard before. I used the word nihilistic in a book once, and my mum went, "What is nihilistic?" And I was like, and I tried to explain the meaning, and she was just like, "Who are you? You're not my son." Because the more I've read the last few years, the more it's improved my vocabulary. It's allowed me to develop my communication skills more, and I'm able to talk about ideas. Jordan Peterson's helped with this as well. Communicate ideas that I maybe had in the back of my head, but I didn't know how to actually express those ideas before and explain those ideas.
Yeah, well, you've just woke me up to an idea that I'd not really thought about myself. And but to first talk about the actual objectivity of that, it's like there is obviously that objective reason that reading does increase vocabulary, even if you don't necessarily know it. Because I've had situations like that every now and then where I've used the word that maybe I've picked up from a book, and someone's gone like, "Oh, that's a big word," or "That's
well, you are in Manchester, so
yeah. We don't know words here. We just grunt. But and it's not even like an intelligence thing. I don't really see myself as intelligent. It is just one of those things that it does help.
It just happens.
Increase your vocabulary. But the idea that you sort of woke me up to there is the processing the ideas bit. I never really thought of it like that. I know I read to process ideas, but I feel like that's why I also got into BookTube, was to because I feel like I have a lot of ideas in my head, and because I'm sort of more introverted, I tend to take them to paper and want to formulate them and get them out there a little bit. Because I find it interesting to actually talk about this stuff. I just don't naturally do it with people that are around me because they don't read, if that makes sense. That's why I've been enjoying this.
You think more before you speak, especially more than me. Like I just say crap, but like you do sort of stop. You take your time and you go, how do I want to word that properly? And that comes from the sort of things you choose to read, I think, as well. I mean, the part of that is obviously your personality, but you because you're someone that I guess cares about wording the psychological and the existential stuff and the themes, and you want to talk about those and you want to do them justice. It's a very, you read for ponderous reasons. Do you get what I mean? So to ponder is to critically think and critically analyze. So you want to be able to word that properly. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if I'm reading just for emotions, I can just riff.
Yeah, I guess for me it's like trying to make sure I'm speaking truth, or what is at least my truth, and being honest to myself as well, because I feel like on a sort of inner value level, because we all have different values, which again, reading links into all this stuff. I think like your values and all this, like in terms of my values, it's important for me to sort of make sure I'm speaking my truth, if that makes sense.
I mean, it's definitely a great way to understand ourselves, the world around us, other people. I think it's important. I think people really should read. And I think if people don't read, they really should give it a go, because there's got to be books out there for everyone, you know?
Yeah, there definitely is. And I don't think it's like a lost art. Again, one of the reasons I got into BookTube was to maybe convince people to read. I think it is not just like important in terms of like you'll learn. It's just you just learn a lot about yourself, and it's important to your sort of inner human experience of who you are as an individual, and figuring out who you might be as an individual, if that makes sense. Like, I think there's books out there for everyone. And again, this going back to this argument of fiction being pointless or something, I guess, is I think it's fiction that helps you do that the best in terms of figuring out your own psychology.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, like non-fiction serves a purpose. Non-fiction and fiction serve a purpose, but like fiction communicates similar things on such a more personal and intimate level. And I think a lot of people, me included, don't necessarily take that stuff in unless it's fed to us in such a personal and intimate way. I really want to feel that from the point of view of a character. I don't want some stuffy professor telling me in an essay what this thing is. I want to feel that thing.
You told me you don't have much empathy.
Well, yeah, maybe not naturally. That's why this is why I gravitate to read in this sort of way, because that's psychological learning for me. That's emotional education for me. Yeah. Because I am a bit insensitive sometimes. I think I just sort of don't think about the fact that this might upset someone, and maybe it's helpful. Yeah. Oh. But maybe that's helpful then for me to really practice empathy as much as I can, because writing is an empathetic exercise for me as well. You know, I'm really putting myself in other people's shoes as much as I possibly can.
I think it's going to be that for everyone. You just more consciously practice it. Is that
some people are more naturally empathetic, so they got a head start on me.
I didn't think I was that empathetic until I started reading more. I definitely have learned to be more empathetic through reading.
Right, I'm gonna wrap this up now, and then I'm gonna ask you, Billy, what if you could recommend some stuff to like my audience to do with more existential fiction and more thought-provoking stuff, because I do actually want to get more into some of this. I'm gonna read what's it called? Flowers
for Algernon or Algernon.
Algernon, one of them. That I want to read. That you convinced me to want to read that, and I do want to give Dostoevsky a go. It's just I know that they're going to be tougher to read because it's out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, that's why I sort of did a video on Notes from Underground. I think it's a great stepping stone because it's short and there's a lot to sort of extract in there. There is quite a lot of ideas thrown in there, and Notes from Underground is a great book, I think, especially to start with Dostoevsky. I don't think you'll have any issue.
Maybe I'll give it a go this year. No promises though, but I do want to give some of this stuff a go. Do you have any other recommendations in that field?
Yeah. So I recently did Fight Club, which is
I
a
want to
book
read
that
that
I
as well.
highly
Yeah.
recommend. And I mean, if you've seen the movie, the book's pretty close, but there's a lot of existential sort of ideas in there. It's about learning who you are, who you want to be, you know, and not lying to yourself and in your actions and all that good stuff. But Fight Club as a book, for me, we're kind of preaching to the crowd, I feel a little bit here, because most people that are going to be watching this already read. But I think Fight Club is one of those books that non-readers, and especially men, like, I know it's a bit harsh these days to say that, like, to men, but it is a book
some
for
books
men,
are
I'd say.
marketed. Some books are marketed for just women, so I don't think that's that harsh. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, there's always exceptions, but I mean, in general psychology, people generalize for a reason because majorities of certain groups of people gravitate towards certain things. I don't think that's that big of a hot take.
It's mostly like more women read than men do, but I think Fight Club as a book is a great book for men in terms of like being a piece of fiction that will maybe hit your chords, I guess, you know, hit the right areas. And I guess I'd recommend, for existentialism, I would recommend Nietzsche for philosophy, although he can be quite hard to read. Even I'm confused by Nietzsche, but he does have a lot of great work out there.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure most of us will understand Nietzsche on our 59th read.
And I still don't know if I understand Beyond Good and Evil, but
No,
that is a good read. But he has a
how do you read something that you don't understand?
You just got to kind of wade through it and then think about it. Like
I can't do that.
That's the thing. Like, I feel like I want to understand something when I read something like that, and it kind of annoys me that I don't. And I'm like, why don't I understand it?
That's probably a good attitude, because that means you're going to keep trying to improve your. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm sort of a bit stagnant in terms of intellectual improvement. I'm sort of like, can I even be bothered to learn this? That's sort of how I do it. So I don't necessarily want to read that, because I know I'm going to have to push my mind to really fully take from it what should be taken from it, and I don't want to do that. That's effort.
I don't even know why it annoys me. I just it's just there. I'm just like, why don't I understand it?
Intellectual insecurity. We've all got it. I am going to wrap this up now. So
yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think this has been a good conversation. It's been thought-provoking. It's made me think more, actually, about the sort of books I want to pick up in the future. You know?
I've enjoyed it. It's been quite broad. I feel like maybe I should have honed it in a little bit, but I've enjoyed the actual conversation.
No.
I think it's been great.
I think we've made it accessible. Right, so thank you for watching or listening or whatever. Obviously, if you guys want to hear more of Billy's takes and hear more about existential fiction, go to Billy Bonsai. Great channel. I will hopefully try and cover some more stuff, and I'd like to have more conversations like this in the future, because it does interest me. I find it to be a lot of work, like, mentally, to be honest. So but I do want to get better at that, you know, because I don't want to just sit in my intellectual echo chamber, you know, and not push myself. And I feel like I have reached a point, especially with COVID, where I've just sort of got comfortable in my little zone of existence, and I'm not stepping out of that anymore. So I'm definitely going to read some of the things you've recommended, 100%.
I think there's plenty of room on BookTube for these sorts of conversations, and for us to have maybe more prepared conversations as well, because this one has just been us two just chatting, really, which I've enjoyed.
I mean, this has actually been not an in for me, but just more of a, like, come, Luke, smell the pie, come and join the existential realm a bit for me. So, yeah, like, comment, subscribe, whatever, sub to Billy. If you want to buy a crumpet on a t-shirt, go to lukeedwardsmerch.com. If you want to send me some books, I have got some of Billy's recs in my Amazon wishlist, so if that's what you want to do, you want to send me some existential books, come and do that in my Amazon wishlist. I think I have got I've got flowers for algan, one of them. Right, cool. Thank you for watching / listening. Peace. Say bye, Billy.
Thanks for having me on, and I'll see you in the channel if you do subscribe.
Yes, definitely do that. Bye.